I was weak for as long as I didn't talk about it. And that's what you should take with you. One is strong when one talks about it. You are strong when you stand by it. And if you have this strength, then you are also strong, for example, to accept forms of therapy. And then a part of the old strength returns. Then you have a software again that allows you to think normally, because that was really gone in the meantime.
Burnout. Much discussed, still tabooed and stigmatized. How does burnout actually feel? Who can it affect and how do you deal with it? These and other questions demand answers. In this podcast series, we go in search of it. I am sitting in front of a man who appears calm, who appears sympathetic, who has already achieved a lot in his life, who has already experienced a lot. A man who gives me the impression that everything is simply going well and good. And yet we know, in the backpack of Lüchinger, as with unfortunately many other people, the topic of burnout. And that's exactly what we want to address in this podcast series. And a warm welcome to the second episode. Schorsch, how are you? How do you feel? It has been several days and weeks since we last saw each other.
Before I say that, I would like to address it with hardware and software. The hardware may be quite okay, but that doesn't mean that what's inside, in the package, in the machine, in the computer, whatever was built, is exactly the same. Quality standard. In this respect, it is also misleading. Actually, you don't really see it that way, but over time you do, because the tiredness becomes apparent. It's about the feeling, I feel okay still, that's good. I feel good about it because I can still benefit from the stationary stay. I feel good about it because I really make an effort to follow the medical instructions. Effort because it is not easy to always remember everything. One changes sides. I am 58. You get used to the routine and then you have to break out of this routine, out of this comfort zone, whatever, and then you have to reorient yourself. In that sense, yes, I'm doing well. A few days, a few weeks have passed since the first podcast. I have learned a lot again and it's okay.
What have you learned?
Point one, really to overpace this danger. This is the discipline. I also said it in the last podcast. It is simple but not easy. Somehow it is easy because everything is there, but it is not simple because you have to build a new form of discipline. You can feel that the body and mind are rigorous. Thank God, I say. One learns to deal with it, and then it helps to put it into perspective. And these are the first learnings. More consistent. Then stay consistent so that this recovery, the progress, become part of everyday life, and that in the near future, I have the strength again, where not only the hardware, but also the software is right.
Last time you said, turn off your phone at 6 p.m., not too many appointments. You address it, not that easy. How is it going with you? Are you already struggling a bit again, that it doesn't get out of hand again?
Yes and no. No mobile phone, easy. So this is a mechanical process. You come home, you press a button, and then it's gone. That is really brilliant. I really enjoyed and got pleasure from it. The other, I started this planning, no appointments before 9. From 9 to 12 at the company, exchanging with the team. The team knows exactly when I am available. This 9 to 12, why? Quite simply, from a medical point of view, I am obviously not yet 100% fit. The requirement is 30%, and that gives Monday to Thursday 12 hours, if you calculate a little generously there. As an entrepreneur, you don't have a 38-hour work week, and then it has to open somewhere. And that's going well. Now it's just that you might think, oh, that's still possible, but you quickly get caught up in reality. That was so, it won't be like that anymore. Afternoons are really reserved for me, for therapies, for my time, to simply find this peace, find this balance, and then gradually increase what it concerns load.
How have the past weeks been for you since we last saw each other? What have you done? How has your life looked? What highlights or low points did you have?
I want to say it like this: there are only highlights because it just keeps moving forward. You can feel it. That's fantastic when you feel it. This also includes, this is really something for me that has a positive aspect, namely to feel when it could be too much. I introduced this professional timeline for myself, as explained briefly, to make it work. The organization at home, that works. I'm already on it. I also mentioned during the appointments that the environment is also part of it. Quality time, really planning with friends, that works too. So I think the things, the requirements that one has, it's not a book where you have many, many points. One page with capitalized 2, 3 dots is enough, but you simply have to consistently implement it.
And you have already had performances on stage again.
Exactly. How were they? They were good. However, when I say that, it always depends on what the feedback is. We live, when we are on stage or in public, 100% on feedback. They were good. From the preparation point of view, it was manageable. It was an event that I had last year. I already had an idea of what was coming my way. And that was completely new now. On the day when the moderation was, I signed off from the company. I would never have done that before. I said, then the focus is on this 1 hour moderation. I need my time for this. And it worked, was good.
We left off at the last episode with our look back into the past at your second burnout. In the year 2004, you were allowed to go to a burnout clinic. You have already talked about your stay in the last episode, yoga, exercise, and relaxing. That helped you, you said, for 4 weeks. With what feeling, if you want and can put yourself back in, did you go to the clinic back then? I can imagine that there is already a certain inhibition threshold.
Yes, actually, it was a bit stubborn until that time because it was something unknown. And then came the point where one accepts this. How does the situation in front of the mirror explain? Yes, you are sick. The conversation with the doctor, to tell the family doctor, now something has to happen, and then this step comes. And it's the same with physical ailments. They say that if the pain is big enough, then you look forward to the surgery. And I was in such a psychosomatic state at the time. It hurt me, it hurt. I was happy to take this step. And then actually all this skepticism or also this shame that one has to do it goes away. You go in like into a tunnel which starts somewhere, which ends somewhere, and inside there is just no daylight, but it is bright. And you can feel this brightness, you can influence it, and eventually the famous light at the end of the tunnel really comes. When weeks pass, when you see that therapy forms help, when you see that you sleep again, when you see that you regain energy, you enjoy going out with people again, then you know that you are making progress. I already experienced that back then. I'm anyway one who goes by the motto, let people talk because they talk about everyone. I don't care about the form of what one says when I do something. But until I do that, then one is already a little simply also unsure. And that is part of it and is intensified in a burnout phase. Uncertainties and anxiety are something that just comes up.
And it had been about 10 years or a little more since the first burnout. What has changed for you in the clinic, in everyday clinic life?
What did it look like? It was about A, sleeping a lot. That was good. The days were structured, but not in a way that it was an overcrowded program, because you have to imagine that basically someone comes who actually doesn't like it, who is tired, not only now from sleeping, but also otherwise from energy, from spirit. You don't want to overload them. And that was, when I look in the rearview mirror now, that was quite manageable at the time. No comparison to what it was 10 years before, because 10 years before it was actually autodidactic. There wasn't burnout, I just worked too much. And there I really took a week's vacation in the sun for the first time, slept a lot. This not sleeping accompanies you permanently, and then did nothing at home. When I think back 30 years now, I don't remember every minute anymore, but that was simply the goal. And then 20 years ago, it was already a bit methodical, and in terms of that, the days were manageable in terms of workload. Everything that one has done in such a way that one could bear it, and it was okay.
You are also in the process of re-entering the professional world today, especially in these days and weeks. How was it 20 years ago? The re-entry several months past.
Yes, exactly, that was it. I then had a stress test, as it is called today. That was the Spengler Cup. I was in this rehab at the end of November until mid-December, shortly before Christmas. The Spengler Cup, that was these 5 days intense, worked. But it was, of course, far, far away from what was standard for me. And I also remember a conversation with the family doctor where it was about what one is able to achieve, where he then said, prepare yourself that you can never achieve 100% again. But we have to define these 100%, because up until now for you, 100% was 150. So it doesn't have to be that much. And then came January, February, this time feeling your way. I was back in early March. I am fully aware of this because in November, after this Spiegel action, I received a request to write text for a website. Then I went to the CEO and said, here is the dossier back. I can't, I'm gone. Please do not go to someone so that your project does not get stuck there. Then the answer was no. We're waiting for you to come back. Okay, at that moment you can't classify it like that. I simply thanked and brought the dossier back. And then at the end of February, beginning of March, when I felt capable again, at least in terms of feeling, to do this work again, that was the first project. I didn't tell anyone. I withdrew, did this text work, then was very nervous when I met with the CEO who presented the content. He looks through all of that and then he simply says casually, that's why we waited. It's exactly how we want it. That took a load off my mind. It was a boulder, a disproportionately large stone. I knew my feeling was not wrong. I'm back where I want to be. And then it started. It was spring.
Then it started. And years later, did the burnout still accompany you somewhere in your mind? Or was that no longer part of your life? Have you suppressed it, processed it, or pushed it aside? How were the years afterwards?
So not consciously pushed, it just wasn't present anymore. One feels good until it is, maybe even after an operation. If the knee has been operated on, there will be pain at the beginning, and if it doesn't hurt anymore, then it's okay. And so it was with that. It also happened that I had a really big flagship project for business. And I was also focused on that and not like before, these various many stages. And that helped. I couldn't play many stages because of this commitment to the new project. And from that point of view, that was good. I knew from my time that I had to change one or two things. One thing was, it was also advice from the family doctor. There will be days when you don't feel well. Then accept it and cancel the appointments. As an entrepreneur and self-employed person, you have a bit of control over it yourself. There actually were days like that, even after that moment, when I felt very, very good again. And I didn't ignore that, but I did exactly as I was advised, and that has also helped. There was stability, balance, and it did me very, very well. And this reliability of the mandate of the job has helped me not to be greatly distracted. And that lasted until 2018. Then this project ended due to the death of Andy Rees, as I mentioned during the pilot.
That means you haven't had burnout in mind anymore all these years?
Not consciously related to me, of course, constantly confronted with people who had a base, such a hole, a slump, but not related to me. I knew that if certain circumstances occur, it is thinner. And I believe that I have succeeded in using these times over the past few years to achieve a good stability. Not perfect, whatever that means, not indestructible, but it was very easy to handle.
You said earlier that it helped you to only have one project. Is this perhaps also a learning or a tip that you can give, that one should not dance at too many weddings at the same time?
So I can say, in my case, I have learned that the danger is great, and that has nothing to do with getting bogged down. But if one is mentally broad-minded, if one has many interests, that one also wants to implement them. That's what I stand for. I have all these exciting projects, will eventually maybe become too much in total. And I can guess that I would advise myself and I would advise someone who is in a similar situation where the amount can eventually become too much. If I listen to others, even from my current or last hospital stay, then even one project is enough. If you have a project and don't get bogged down or build several, but simply get involved intensively, time-consuming in the project, then maybe even be entrusted with leadership work because you do the work well. Somewhere there is a supervisor who says they can still do it, they are doing well. This is a huge danger.
You said that until 2018 you also had this project as a fixed point. And then in 2023 you slipped back into the third burnout. What happened in between during these 5 years?
Yes, a lot has happened and also not. Some things happened because I was then from one year to the next, forced to almost reinvent myself. So if you are focused on something for a period of 15 years, like 70, 80%, and that goes away, you don't have to be a mathematician. There is a lot missing.
Yep.
It was about how can I solve this vacuum now? How can I fill in these missing percentages? The easiest thing would have been to simply reuse such a project. That was not possible. So it quickly became clear that the goal was to fill this gap through acquisition through several small projects. And let's make it 10% now, so that means 8 stages will be added. And that it requires more effort, that it can be more intense, that it also requires more energy. I believe that is simply in the nature of things. So that was the first part, and that worked. Then came Corona, this time out that nobody actually wanted and nobody needed. And in this time, when you then decided 25, 28 years ago, where you want to go your way, and you see from one day to the next that you are standing on the edge because the path does not continue. I have decided for sports communication. During Corona, there were no sports events, so there was no need for sports communication. I have decided to organize. There were no events, so you don't need to organize anything. And I have decided on moderation. No event, no moderation. You're just standing there. You have 2 years of bills coming in that you have to pay and practically can't issue any bills. That then developed into the question of what worked or what didn't work. Then nothing really worked anymore. And then there are these moments where you might use the word fear for that. There are fears of loss in life and there are fears of existence. In that area, it was towards existential fear. I couldn't lose anything because nothing was happening. I was always convinced that I am in an industry with organization and communication that will come back. But when? I also said, even if it's economically tough, if it had been a third year, okay. But emotionally, I couldn't have handled it. If you are used to working with people, working for people, creating ideas, implementing, making, it has nothing to do with ego to be on stage. When I'm on stage, I stand as a voice for the partner who gives me this assignment, not because something has to happen to me. If such things come your way, then at least I was very challenged. I don't want to say overwhelmed right now, but very challenged. And then all of these connections come into play. We're talking about psychosomatic. It is the head, the mind, the soul, and it is also the body. And there, I was completely exhausted, and this time was over. It started again, and then so much came, then came the overwhelm. And in the meantime, if you still, I definitely wasn't the only one. We actually had good starting positions here in Liechtenstein too. But when you then go towards support and you get answers like, yes, we have nothing planned for them, you fall through the cracks, then you think that can't be. Now I am almost 30 years an entrepreneur. I pay all the taxes that need to be paid. There were years when we were small companies. We paid more taxes than our banks because that's how the system was. Okay, that's fine. And then you just see these pictures and it burdened me. I think I'm not the only one who felt that way. Then you have to run, and in the end it means you can go to the community. They also have a fund. That was too disgusting for me. Then you almost go begging. I am an entrepreneur. I pay for everything. I can't fall through a grid because I'm present. And then you just take the step and go to the community. And you explain yourself, and then you get support. Extremely grateful to have received it. But the amounts, if you only reduce it to amounts, they would go out again immediately because I needed them to pay the HOA fees. There, where actually nothing comes, and pension funds and so on. That was almost a schizophrenic situation to deal with. Something is coming, nothing is coming, where is it going anyway? And in the analysis, it is quite clear with all the doctors, the experts who are there, that was the trigger for my third burnout, this phase during and after Corona.
Also, this constant pressure that you probably felt?
Yes, the one you make yourself. One is not successful as an entrepreneur for 30 years, relatively successful according to my definition. We have been able to pay all bills for 30 years. We have employees who are well, so you can't do it if you're not used to doing it. Dealing with pressure, I believe, is simply a part that every entrepreneur has.
And in this phase, would you say that the path to the third burnout has begun a little bit?
Yes, I didn't see it that way. I simply felt the symptoms at some point. I was there in front of the wall and knew that there was no way forward. I just felt the lack of sleep, the lack of concentration, the lack of desire, the lack of wanting to get up, the lack of being reliable, forgetting appointments, not writing them down, and so on. The symptoms. But I didn't know exactly where from. Until one then went into the analysis, just normal like analyzing any projects. And they usually don't start on the day you feel bad. It starts somewhere else. And yes, that was the evaluation of my last few years of life, that these were the triggers for this renewed low.
You said that after Corona, so to speak, everything went extremely well again. That means I take on many projects, a lot of work. Or how did your life look like after Corona?
Yes, actually not many projects, but simply those that were suspended have been reactivated. So we went back to the fair, we were able to make a league again, we were able to make progress again. There were sports events again. I was able to participate in the Tour de Suisse again. I could go to the Ice Hockey World Championship. I was at the Spengler Cup again. I stood on stages again and hosted. All of that came back, but in a concentrated form. Did you maybe feel it yourself? Suddenly everyone wanted something again. Suddenly everyone wanted to organize a party again. Every anniversary had to be celebrated again. And that was already a cadence that one has to learn to deal with. And that was just a little too much.
You then worked a lot and had to start again, so to speak, from 0 to 100 in the working world. When did this functioning start again in the professional world? Or have you also started functioning in the private world?
So if I worked, then very badly, then I didn't work well, so I may have just marched and got things done, but not in a way that benefited me. I am of the opinion that, especially in private life, one has noticed it, the private environment noticed it earlier than the business environment. And that is perhaps mostly what is closer to one drives over it more than the other. And the family must be closer than the business, that was it. And how this influence really came into the business world, that was not good. And then it was clear, now it's about existences. It's about my existence as an entrepreneur. It's about reputation, but it's also about the enterprise. I am not alone. I am a strong partner with certain projects in a company. I just had to get my own company under control, and the team was also very helpful in that regard. But nevertheless, I had to decide to take myself out.
When was it clear that the third burnout was imminent or that you were in the third burnout? Was there another one of those, let's say, mirror moments that you mentioned in the first episode?
No, there wasn't. I believe thanks to the second episode or experience I had. The second experience has taught me to become a little more sensitive. And when I made the appointment last year in spring with the general practitioner, I approached him and said, I believe something is coming our way. And from that point on, the whole interaction with the third party was a completely different quality. I no longer denied it. I admitted it. I discussed the possible steps with the general practitioner in a dialogue we tried. We set stages with the ultimate goal. If it doesn't work, then inpatient treatment comes into play, but maybe we can also manage it without a hospital stay. And that was the start in spring, the development throughout the year. In spring, then practically withdrawn from all business projects, on the advice of the doctor, only certain things done to also test what is possible. I never said 100%. I always wanted to be able to work just to find out, because I didn't feel like I was at rock bottom either. And that worked too. And that's why I consciously went into inpatient care and then consciously came out again. The quality that we two have now, 3 months ago, no chance. No chance. And I feel that in everyday life. Certain things are back at a very good level. Not yet as I would like it. Maybe that won't happen either. Maybe the good level is simply the new quality that I will get used to.
And I also think that the communication now during the third burnout was probably very different with your environment and also in business, I assume, due to your experiences.
Exactly. As mentioned in the last podcast, it's not easy, and I understand if you don't want to talk about it, but I recommend talking about it. Nothing to swallow, nothing to gorge on, as they say, but out. Make it almost snail-shaped, spiral-shaped. Where is the most important point? That is at home. Openly address with the family and then spiral further inside the company. There doesn't have to be a notice on the bulletin board, but there are people who need to know that. I was much better at the current one, that I went out. It took a bit of courage, that I had it, also to sit down with customers and say, now we have to talk. Fortunately, we also said the feedback was good. Tell me who your customers are. I'll tell you who you are, or who your partners are. I'll tell you who you are. I can count myself extremely lucky. It hurt even more that one had to withdraw, and in certain projects the team had to fill this gap, which of course was not planned. I was also grateful for the partner and team, especially in the trade fair area, who simply took over the work that would otherwise have been in my hands.
I think that the environment and the reactions from the environment, whether professional or private, are extremely important for burnout sufferers. And yet, I find it's not so easy for people who have little experience with burnout when someone says they have burnout. And how you, George, have experienced. It's probably not clear to everyone how to react, is it?
How so? How so? If it's the first time anyway. What's going on when you head towards this fatigue? That's all new. These are circumstances one doesn't know. You don't even know why you suddenly can't sleep anymore. Depending on age, it is called, regardless of whether you are a man or a woman, midlife crisis, or there are menopause. You start to sweat because it's simply the body, it's stressed with itself. But that can also be a logical consequence of something else, of mental fatigue that triggers something. You just can't sleep anymore. How so? How can one assess this? Then, because it is something very special, actually it is something very intimate, because it is still treated almost like a taboo, because it is stigmatized. That's why we're doing it. Maybe we can help a little to counteract it. Then no one wants to come out, expose themselves. You don't like that. And that is one reason why such situations drag on for so long, because it takes a long time until you have this moment of reflection. The environment is not ready, maybe the business environment, because you don't address it and so on, and then the personal aspect. I don't want to come across as a weak person. I'm happy to say that. I was weak for as long as I didn't talk about it, and that's what you should take with you. One is strong when one talks about it. You are strong when you stand by it. And if you have this strength, then you are also strong, for example, to accept forms of therapy. And then a part of the old strength returns. Then you have a software again that allows you to think normally, because that was really gone in the meantime.
It almost hurts me a little, but the time is already over, like in a flash. And I would like to go even deeper into the topic of people who have helped you in the next episode, and maybe also hear a tip or two from you on how to deal with someone who has burnout, what helps and what doesn't, right? And I'm looking forward to it. Very, very firm on this third conversation. That's it with the second episode. Thank you, Josh, for speaking so openly and honestly.
Thank you, Randy.